Hi folks, first of all the housework. I'm smoking my Cobbett of the Shire, and in it I've got some of my own version of pipeweed. It's of Hobbit's weed rather. It's a lovely smoke. I like the taste of the blend, and it's a nice smoke when I've smoked too many Balkans or too many other what I call stronger tobaccos. Having said to everybody all day today that we hadn't got any snow here, we now have. And it was a surprise to look out of the window and see just how much had fallen whilst I dozed in the chair after watching ski jumping. And it made me think about my childhood in Norfolk. If you look at a map of England, Norfolk bulges out, Norfolk and Suffolk, East Anglia. And it used to be that before climate change kicked in, that the winds used to come straight off Siberia and straight onto the Norfolk coast. So a lot of our winters were really cold, snowy, and we'd get cut off in where we lived. We lived in a cottage called Keeper's Cottage, although Dad was a head cowman and tractor driver on the farm. During the winter, we'd make sure that we got extra food in, just in case we were snowed in. But if necessary, one of the big tractors on the farm would go down into the village and get what people wanted. The milk we got from the cows on the farm, that was just brought home by Dad, fresh from the teat, so to speak. None of this homogenised stuff or treated stuff. It came as it came and was beautiful and creamy and lovely tasting. But anyway, back to the snow. We lived down a long dirt track which fed onto the village road, which was paved, which was tar macadam. So in winter, we'd often get cut off. The snow drifts were up to 4 or 5 feet deep. So it meant that as a child, I spent quite a lot of the winter at home, unable to get into school. And it used to sort of lead to some interesting experiences for my parents and for me. We didn't have central heating. We had coal fires or wood fires. So it meant that when you woke up in the morning, you had frost flowers on the windows on the inside where your breath had frozen. And during the cold winter's night, you'd put coats onto the bed to give you that extra warmth to layer it up a bit. There are times when Dad and Mum might go down to the village pub and make their way through the snow to the pub, especially at Christmas time, if there was a party on or something like that. And I'd stay at home, or I'd go and stay with one of the other farmers' families that were nearby, and Dad and one of the local smallholders would make their way with Mum down to the village pub, and inevitably it would snow while they were in there, and they'd come back and the roads were blocked and they were merry with the drink. And one particular night they came back and the roads were just so bad that they decided the best way was to go through the fields, because the hedging would sort of protect the snow a bit. It wouldn't be quite so deep. But it meant that when they got to the hedge, they had to climb over the hedge, which wasn't easy, particularly when it's two drunken men trying to help a semi-drunken woman over the hedge. But they got into a routine where when they got to the hedge, they'd throw Mum over. And she hopefully would land in a snowdrift and would be all right. By the time they got home, they were all soaking wet, freezing cold. And Dad poked the fire and put more wood on it. And they decided that the best thing would be to have a wee dram of something just to make the warmth come back. Usually it was rum, because Dad always in winter would put a tot of rum in his morning drink and his evening drink when he was going out, if they had a bad calving or something like that. But I've never really forgotten those winters, because when you cut off with the snow like that, everything sort of takes on a different characteristic. Your life closes in on the small area of the house. Dad would always make it to work, no matter what the conditions were. And in the winter, the milking herd were brought up off the marshes into the milking parlours on the farm and into the sheds on the farm. So that wasn't too bad, and anybody who knows what it's like to have a herd of cows indoors, it's fairly warm, if not fragrant. It always amazed me who would make it to the house. The postman would always try and make it. He had his bicycle, because he had a fairly long country round, and he would arrive, and if there were postcards or that kind of thing, he would tell Mum what they said. You know, he read all the postcards and mail that he could get his hands on, really. But he wasn't a young man, and it always amazed me that he was a tough old bird and would make it through the snow. If he didn't make it, then it was really bad weather. The other memory I've got of it is of the television news reports. It was in the days before we had the motorways that crisscross the country now. And there's a part of the old road system that's on the northwest side, and it's called Shap Fell. And there's a hill going up to Shap, the village. And invariably the news would show you the wagons unable to go up, the big lorries and that kind of thing. And you knew it was bad when they said Shap is closed. It's just little memories that you have. One of the other memories I have is of the local children around. There was a farm with a couple of children on that I used to play with, but there was no blacksmith shop that was just down the road from us. And whenever I could, winter or summer, I'd go and watch him at work. He was a very, very big, strong man. Much like my father, he would just stand there, and if somebody brought a Shire horse to be shod, he would push it around as if it was a little pony or something like that. But it was fascinating watching me heat the metal until it was white hot, and he always used to judge the temperature by eye. He knew instinctively when to bring it out and beat it and temper it. It was a skill that he'd learnt, I suppose, from his father. And he was one of those quiet men, partly, I suppose, because most of his time was spent alone in the blacksmith shop. But he always welcomed me into the shop. He would say, "Don't stand out there, boy, come in." And occasionally he'd let me help him. Not doing much, but he'd give me a pair of pliers and say, "Hold that," and it'd be attached to the metal as he struck it. But usually he was the one that did all the handling. And just to see how he formed the metal in the flames and then bend it into the shapes he wanted and weld other pieces of metal just by the heat. It was just fascinating to see him make a gate or make a candlestick or even a poker. And the poker that he made for me to take home, we had for 20 or 30 years whilst ever we had a coal fire. And it was a big heavy poker that did its work well. So, whenever I see snow, my mind goes back sometimes to those times, the times when it was just you, the family and close friends who lived round about. And it seemed that work closed down and people spent more time together. And before we had electric, it would be oil lamps. And there's nothing better than sat round a table with a paraffin lamp and that circle of light, either playing cards, playing dominoes or poker die, or just reading and talking. One of the big memories of my childhood were my illnesses. I used to suffer from a chest disease. Each year I would get very ill with bronchitis. And in the winter my bed would be brought down and put in front of the fire. And I would drift in and out of consciousness. I think almost in and out of life itself sometimes. It was just after the war, when penicillin wasn't easily obtained. But whenever I was ill, when I was seriously ill like that, my father would walk 3 miles or 4 miles up the road to the station at Belton. And the steam trains coming in to go to Great Yarmouth would stop at the station, and either the engine driver or the guard would give my dad a bottle of penicillin medicine for me. And he would have to do that maybe for 2 or 3 weeks until the fever burst and the penicillin did its job. But if death is like that, the experience that I felt, that warm drifting in and out of consciousness, warm before the fire, I don't think it'll be too bad. Well, I think that's it for now. I'm hoping for a white Christmas. I really look forward to them. We don't get them much in England. And I want to wish you all a happy Christmas as well. I'll probably do it a lot more before Christmas, but there'll be some of you who maybe won't see me or watch my stuff before Christmas. So have a very happy Christmas and have a good new year. And may God bless you and your God go with you.